Smaller, poor countries are the most vulnerable of anywhere in the world to climate impacts, especially in the islands of the Caribbean.
We're getting devastating floods. We're getting, at the same time, every year, lengthening droughts.
This story about Barbados and the debt of small island nations was a project to look at how smaller and poorer countries around the world were able to adapt to climate change and how the debt burdens that they carry would affect their ability to adapt.
When you're talking about billions of dollars, when you're talking about huge international bureaucracies, how do you turn that into something that people can understand?
Barbados had this very charismatic prime minister, Mia Mottley, who was using her gifts as a leader to really summon momentum around a more equitable and fair debt system. Avinash Persod is Mia Mottley's key economic advisor.
We believe we've got an idea. It's about how we're going to make it easier for climate vulnerable countries to borrow money from the development banks.
A couple months after my story published, Mia Mottley and Avinash Persod go to the COP27 climate conference and they propose what ultimately became the Bridgetown Initiative.
I don't need to repeat the horror and the devastation wreaked upon this earth. But what we do need to do is to understand why we are not moving any further.
The Bridgetown Initiative proposes to charge $13 trillion in reserves that the IMF holds to use that huge asset to start to fund some of these programs to aid small countries around the world.
In the 12 months before the story, our plight was a fringe story. In the 12 months afterwards, the Bridgetown Initiative has become possibly the dominant idea around in international finance.
Having an in-depth exploration of this issue published on the platform of the New York Times Magazine and the platform of ProPublica, I think put pressure on the IMF at a critical turning point.
I know a lot of journalists. He was really in-depth and serious and wanted to get the right story. Not his story, but the right story.
We have a responsibility to take difficult issues and make them accessible and understandable, but also to ensure that our leaders are ultimately accountable to us and to the countries that they serve.